fallout, smoke, women crying for their sons because their sons are not, Romans killing riotous groups that are rising up. Free Judea, free our people, autonomy for Israel. You had Herod, an Edomite, and his dynasty. Herod's ruling, killing any potential threat, any potential Messiah. Then you had the Pharisees and the Sadducees, that we learn from Josephus are not Jews by birth. No.
Brothers and sisters, they are there. We are not lost. We are scattered. We are original Hebrew.
Let's go! All praises be to the Most High God. Yeah, I say it.
I was opportune to meet my grandparents, whom from childhood had always made us to understand that we are one of the lost tribes of Israel. One of the lost tribes of Israel. One of the lost tribes of Israel.
Hey, so now we are on our way from Ohafia to Arochukwu. So we're traveling all around.
And this is also an ancient city, the warriors.
Yeah.
They call it the Ephraimite.
Okay.
The Ephraimite.
Let me show you around.
Ephraim Queen. Yes, Ephraim Queen. Yeah.
Ephraim Queen. Yeah.
So they believe.
He said this particular place, they say that they're from the tribe of Ephraim.
Yeah, Ephraimites.
The Ephraim.
And ethnicity is a cult? What's up, Zion Dynasty? This is your favorite dreaded Israelite. I'm back in this thing, y'all, so I'm gonna jump right back into it. That first video was me coming back, getting back warmed up, seeing where the misconceptions are. A lot of you guys do not play through the entirety of the lesson, and not probably the majority, probably some of y'all, because I got way more support than I do people that actually troll, and that's just my own kind of, I look at negative comments sometimes and blow them way higher than what they really are, because the majority of y'all are like family. Y'all check on me, Shawnee D, the kids, and just are so encouraged by the lessons. But this is to that person that is genuine about scholarship. A lot of y'all that are watching, I know I do have trolls that come in and you're not really trying to listen to the lesson. You're not really trying to look at the precepts and see David's lineage. But to y'all that are with an open mind, we're going to jump into that thing real quick. So a lot of y'all have been quoting Revelation 5 verse 5 that says that weep not, for the Lion of the tribe of Judah has prevailed. In the book of Revelation, we see Christ in his glorified form, and a lot of y'all are using that along with Hebrews 7:14 that says it's evident that our Lord sprang out of Judah. You're using that to say, and that's Psalm 78, I'm gonna deal with that as well. I might insert that clip from that video that I did, Joseph is sold into slavery, because I showed a beautiful Cambridge, I believe it was a Cambridge author that went into that clan of Ephraimites that settled in Bethlehem, and it also clarifies that Psalm 78, but I'm gonna deal with that. So first, let's deal with the out of Judah thing, right? Now, if I say that I'm out of Alabama or that I'm from Alabama, is that saying that I'm from Birmingham? Is that saying that I'm from Mobile? That is not clarifying that. We have to understand when we're reading the text, you have to differentiate from the tribe of Judah, the southern kingdom of Judah, which was also be referred to as Judah, and you're talking about the borders of Judah. The borders of Judah, like Micah 5:2, O Bethlehem Ephratah, though you be least of the providences, that word providences is talking about cities or towns, though you be the least of the towns of Judah. So in that context, Bethlehem is Judah in terms of a city within the borders. Y'all, we got to put our think caps on when we're dealing with this stuff. A lot of y'all are coming from the Christian church and you're used to just believing something and running with it. That's why 90% of us that come in this truth are just being fed Judah. Understand, the southern kingdom of Judah consisted of two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and the northern kingdom of Joseph or Ephraim was the other 10 tribes. So when you hear me say that we're Ephraim, I'm not just talking about the royal house of Ephraim, son of Joseph, But if you fall within any of those 10 tribes, this is where y'all got to bear with me. I know this is a big concept, but you got to really see what I'm saying. The majority of Israel would be the northern kingdom of Israel, those 10 tribes. You will fall, if you fall into any of those tribes, you are Ephraim, or Joseph, our northern kingdom, right? So now back to Judah. Judah could be the tribe, a town or province or region, or the southern kingdom. So when you say that Yeshua came out of Judah, when we look at Revelation chapter 5, when we look at Hebrews chapter 7 verse 14, absolutely he came out of Judah. I'm gonna put the scripture on the screen to show you what I've been saying. And 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 12, it reads, "Now David the son of Jesse, the Ephrathite or Ephraimite, from Bethlehem in Judah." So the argument has never been that he's not out of Judah. A lot of the trolls that come on here, and it's only probably less than 1%, and I don't want to discourage all those faithful tuners in that are learning, a lot of the family that are taking notes, that are getting these books. I don't want to discourage y'all by highlighting the few people that are trolling, but I gotta acknowledge that a lot of them are not listening to the lesson. They're not going through the precepts. They're not studying the Levirate custom, which we're going to deal with on this video. They're just going to the comment section and speaking hate and saying, "Whoa, no, we teaming with Benaiah and Pastor Kelly." I've messaged both of them. I've reached out. I called multiple times to Pastor Kelly. I asked him, and to his credit, I know he doesn't want to get in between this whole thing with Benaiah doing the Ephraimite deception and myself. So it's kind of a lot for me to ask him to, if you have his number, can I get it to reach out for him? And he doesn't really want to be caught in between it. But I've messaged Benaiah Israel. I can't get a response, because I think if we sat down and talked, he would see the history, the scholarship that I'm bringing, and understand what I'm saying. That physically Boaz was Judah, but according to the Levirate custom, the Most High sees him in terms of tribe as an Ephraimite, right? So we're gonna deal with that. But so when people say Revelation 5 verse 5 or Hebrews 7:14, he came out of Judah, yes, he came out of Judah. Now with that same sentiment, when you go to Joel chapter 3, which a lot of people like to go through, that Judah will be scattered to the four corners of the earth, they also use Isaiah, and y'all forgive me if I'm kind of going kind of fast. I'm trying to cover it for those that are not going to watch the whole thing. That's why I kind of speak kind of fast. But I want you guys to get this, so I'm going to try to slow it down. In Isaiah chapter 11, it says, "When the Most High regathers the outcast of Israel, and Judah that was the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth, together with the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth," we see this as an end-time messianic prophecy. Now, a lot of people use that Isaiah chapter 11 verse to say CJB is saying that Judah would be scattered to the four corners of the earth. What is this event that's being mentioned? This goes back to the time of Yeshua. Those Judeans that lived within the borders of Judea in that second temple era would be dispersed to the four corners of the earth. This is talking about the region or that kingdom period of Judea, that second temple era. Those that inhabited the land would be dispersed to the four corners of the earth. This is not limited to a specific tribe. We know this. How do we know this? We know this because we know the high priests and the Levites were in that region. We know the Limba tribe of Africa claimed to be those Levites that fled during that period, right? So we know Levi. We also know Benjamin, because Paul himself calls himself a Jew of Jews, and he was a part of that southern kingdom. But was it even limited just to the southern kingdom tribes that will be dispersed? Let's look at that. When we see the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4, she says, "Are you greater than our father Jacob?" For her to say her father was Jacob, she had to be a lineage descendant of Israel. How do we know that? Some people say, well, historically, the Assyrians did plant foreign people in the land of Samaria. We know the history, right? When they moved Israel out of there, when they conquered Northern Kingdom, they put these fake people in the land. Now, how do we know if she is a genuine descendant of Jacob, an Israelite, or not? We know this based on Yeshua. Yeshua says in Matthew chapter 15 verse 24, "I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." He targeted the Samaritan woman. He knew that by going to that well had a lot of significance to blood descendants of Ephraim or Samaria. That well was given by Jacob to his son Joseph. Some scholars believe that was the well that he was put in when he was sold by his brethren. The Bible doesn't make that statement, but some scholars do believe that. So he goes to this well to fish for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now his disciples are like, why are you dealing with the Samaritans? Christ is mindful of Northern Kingdom because he knows his family. He knows how much Ephraim meant to his family of David because of the Ephraimite element of David's lineage, that spiritually David was an Ephraimite. This history of Ruth, her faithfulness, Naomi, this would have been passed on as a family heirloom to true descendants of Dawood. They would have known that they were Ephraite. So this is why Christ's entire mission is to target the lost sheep of the house of Israel. When you see that house of Israel, I know this is a lot, y'all take notes. When we look at Hebrews 8:8 or Jeremiah 31:31, it says, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. When Christ says, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he's talking about Ephraim. So he goes to search for Ephraim via the Samaritan woman. The Pharisees find out. We see this in John chapter 6, John chapter 8. And they say, we know your father. You're Joseph's son. You're born out of wedlock, right? Christ doesn't deny what they're saying. Now this gets into the virgin birth. I'm not trying to freak y'all out. But we got to look at how Christ responds to see the truth of the scriptures. They also say, Christ, you're a Samaritan, right? And you got a devil. Christ responds to those Pharisees and says, I don't have a devil. Wait a second. He did not deny the Samaritan claim. Why would Christ have an allegiance to Ephraim? He descends from that sacred lineage of David that was the Ephrathite custom. Now, I set all this up to give you guys an idea of how Ephraim is hidden in the text beautifully by the wisdom of the Most High Yah. We also see, and I showed you guys this in Jeremiah, you see Jeremiah goes on this massive lament for Israel. I meant to say Ephraim, Israel is interchangeable. Jeremiah laments for Ephraim, laments for them coming back together. He talks about Rachel crying for her kids because her kids are not. We see that scripture quoted in Matthew chapter 2 when Herod goes and kills all the man-childs. He goes through killing all the babies to search for Yeshua because the wise men would not tell that wicked joker, that wicked Edomite, where the man-child would be born, the king of Judea, right? So when he's killing all these babies, the Bible says Rachel cries for her kids because her kids are not. Now Leah was the mother of Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Why is Rachel crying for these Bethlehem babies? We saw that in Genesis chapter 35. So y'all, I give y'all straight precepts. Genesis 35 verse 19, Rachel died on the way to Bethlehem, and this is why that territory, Bethlehem, even though it was within Judah, so Christ came out of Judah, even though Bethlehem was within Judah, it was given to Ephraim, the grandson of Rachel, because she died there. This is why when Herod was killing those babies in Matthew chapter 2, it says Rachel cries for her kids because she's from the grave. She's from the land. The spirit of their ancestors is crying, she's looking at what's going on to these Ephraimite babies in Bethlehem, Christ family, right? Bethlehem was given to Ephraim. This is confirmed in Joshua chapter 15. Bethlehem is not listed as belonging to Judah. We know the history. Rachel died there. Also, I showed y'all the Cambridge, I think it was Tel Aviv Library. No, it wasn't Cambridge. It was the Jerusalem Library JSTOR article, and I'm gonna insert that in here, where it talks about how during the Bronze or the Iron Age, I forget which one, I'm gonna put that clip up, that you had that clan migrating into Judea. So the people living in Judea, which would have been a lot of different tribes, you had Ephraim going into that territory. It was prophesied by Christ. We see this in Luke chapter 21. He prophesies that Judea would be crushed. Judea would tremble under Rome. We see this fulfilled in 70 AD by General Vespasian and his son Titus, that all of those Judeans would be scattered to the four corners. That means that recent kingdom of Israelites living in Palestine would be scattered. This is not limited to the specific tribe of Judah, but Judah, the constituent tribes of Southern Kingdom, and the outcast of Israel. This is what Isaiah chapter 11 is talking about, family. Now, let's go into that Levirate custom. I know this is a lot of history. See, this is why I've reached out to the elders. A lot of you guys, and I pray for Israel. A lot of us have religious mindsets. We don't really want to hear the history. We don't really want to go in to tackle truth. We want to bash one another and tear each other down. I've if y'all look at the channel, all I've done is honor these elders and everybody, and I've reached out to them. But a lot of people, they might think they're too big to, oh, we're not going to mention him. But that's between you and the Most High, that kind of pride. But everything I'm doing is to instill family. That's what this is about, community, and restoring all 12 tribes. And the heartbeat of restoring the 12 tribes is to the 10 Ephraimite tribes. Come on, y'all, it's mathematics. The majority of us would be from those 10 tribes. If it's 12 tribes of Israel, the majority of Israel, what is that, 85%? Would be Northern Kingdom. That's why y'all see me emphasizing that so, because a lot of us are more Northern Kingdom than Southern Kingdom, but there has been a Judean slight because we want to be connected to Christ. We want to be like, yeah, we came into this, found out we was Israel, we related to Christ. You are, but not in the way that you think, because David was a Levirate. He was the product of Obed, the father of Jesse, the father of David. That firstborn son would be given to the remembrance of Elimelech, who was dead, right? To restore his family heritage, their inheritance, and to redeem Naomi and Ruth and that family lineage, right? And we're gonna deal with that, right? So in the book of Ruth, I'm gonna explain to you guys how the Levirate works. A lot of my African Israelite family, y'all get it. I've been getting emails from Nigerians left and right, South Africans, people from Tanzania, people from Ghana, all kinds of, they understand what I'm saying with the Ephraimite connection. A lot of them, it's the American Negro that I get the most hell from, because a lot of them go in with this one West, we're all Judah kind of mindset, and I tackle this thing from a scholastic, genetic, historical, archaeological, oral tradition standpoint. I don't tackle this stuff from such and such told me when I came in the truth I was Judah. I deal with the science. I've done my DNA, GED match, African ancestry, my true ancestry, 23andMe, you name it. I've done it, and I honor the oral tradition of our African family. If they say they're Ephraim, that's who I believe they are. They would know more than we. And we look at the scriptures and we connect the oral tradition to see the people. The Yoruba say they're Ephraim. We already know that. Majority of African Americans, if you do your DNA, you're Yoruba or Igbo. The Igbo claim five of the 10 so-called lost tribes, ancient Israelites of the Northern Kingdom. The Yoruba claim to be the royal house of Ephraim through the B'nai Ephraim that migrated from Morocco. Morocco also owned America. So you see some of these Yoruba, Sephardic, Moorish, Ephraimites, you see them in Africa, you see them in America, hence African America. That's a nugget for y'all. That's why white folks are smart. They call us African American. They know we have right to both lands. America was specifically given to Ephraim because when the southern, and that's a whole nother thing, but when Assyria fell at around 600 BC, Nigeria was founded. Also, the Book of Mormon states that Nephi and a family of the house of Joseph, Manasseh, went to the Americas, right? That's a whole nother thing. And I know a lot of y'all like, what the? Y'all bear with me. I'm gonna give you straight Harvard, Cambridge. Y'all know how we get down. So now back to the Levirate. Now let's explain how David is an Ephraimite. Let's go through this again. Now, when you look at the Levirate, which is only practiced in Africa today, no other people get down like that today. This is how those Jewish people are trying to proselytize Africa and have us call ourselves Jews when they know we're ancient Israelites, Northern Kingdom that preserve the culture of ancient Torah. Nobody else. And if y'all, I watch a lot of African shows on Netflix, Council and that kind of thing. Y'all check these African, these Yoruba, Nigerian, different Netflix shows out. They show you the culture of the people. The Levirate is a big deal in Africa. It can get out of hand. I'm gonna tell you the negative of how it can get out of hand. If a woman's husband dies, if his brothers, let's say they're wicked men, they could say, well, we don't want to have nothing to do with this woman. We just want to take the house of our brother. That's our brother's stuff. Let's say that their brother was very wealthy, right? This could cause chaos. They could say, well, we want his stuff and we don't want his wife, right? Now, in ancient Torah, or Israelite culture, somebody would take off, I believe, their right shoe and slap that Negro in the face and spit in his face because he's defiled his brother's wife, right? And refused to take up the bed to raise up their brother's lineage. So it can get patriarchal very quick, where men just discard women and that kind of thing, but that was never how it was intended to be, right? It was intended to respect our queens as our helpmeets and see them as a jewel and a treasure from the Most High, and respect our brother's remembrance by respecting his bride, right? So it can get kind of, if y'all know how Africa, it can get kind of patriarchal quick, but the Most High intended for it to be a patriarchal society, but he wanted us as leaders, as men, to have the mindset of compassion and love. Now that gets into a whole nother thing, but let me just explain how it works. We see this in the book of Leviticus. Basically, if a man was married to a woman and let's say he dies, right? The person that's nearest of kin, their duty was to sleep with his wife and have a kid to continue that lineage, right? So that lineage family, the Most High cared for all 12 tribes, but not just the tribes. The individual families within the tribes had specific inheritances. So the Most High wanted those specific families to be preserved within each tribe. So the Most High took that thing seriously. So we see this in the book of Ruth. We see the Ephraimite Elimelech die, right? Now I'm going to deal with the whole establishing Elimelech's lineage, which is easy. Even Bnei Israel did not deny he was an Ephraimite, but he just said Boaz was Judah and focused on the physical lineage. But the moral of the story had nothing to do with the physical lineage, but the spiritual resurrection of the grave through the Levirate to raise up Elimelech's name from the grave. And that firstborn son Obed will belong to Ephraim because it will belong to Elimelech. This is why there's a lot of beef between northern and southern kingdom, because a lot of our brothers don't want to acknowledge this, right? I've acknowledged Judah's hand. Without Judah, without Boaz, the Most High would not have been able to protect Joseph. Judah did send Joseph into slavery. I know I bashed that a lot, but it did preserve Joseph and allow his gift to be used to save the tribes because they wanted to kill him. So Judah, having this Ephraimite family within their borders, has kept the lineage of Ephraim from being destroyed by Satan, because Satan would have destroyed that royal line if he could. The Most High used Judah to maintain the leadership, maintain the scepter, until Shiloh would be resurrected, Joseph to take that rightful place as the birthright son, right? So I'm not bashing Judah, and I'm acknowledging that Boaz, without Boaz, that Judeite, going back to Pharez, that lineage of Elimelech, that Ephraimite lineage, would have been terminated, leaving Naomi without an inheritance, leaving Ruth without a covering. So I acknowledge both sides, that spiritually and in terms of the Most High's law, he sees David as an Ephraimite, but the resurrection of David as an Ephraimite was through Judah. So David combines both sticks together through that lineage. Now I'm going to go into some hidden plates of Nephi, the Native American, the Book of Mormon, that stick that is the records of what happened to the Northern Kingdom, whereas we have the Judeo scriptures which highlight the Judean era and do not really go into what happened to the Northern Kingdom. Now it prophesies through Daniel's statue vision about America and that kind of thing, but it doesn't go into as much detail as you have these hidden apocryphal texts, and I'm going to deal with that. So back to the Levirate again. So Elimelech was an Ephrathite or Ephraimite. We know Ephrathite and Ephraimite have the same Strong's Concordance, H673. What does this mean? I know that's kind of complicated. What I'm basically saying is, in the Hebrew, there was one word, Ephrati. Somebody, I'm not saying who, when they translated and saw David was an Ephraimite, they created an Ephrathite word, because in the Hebrew, there was not a different word from Ephrathite or Ephrathite. If you Google the Ephrathite word, it's H673. If you Google Ephraimite, it's H673. In the Hebrew, it was only one word. And the Hebrew language is far more sophisticated than the English language. That's why it has preserved the way it has. There is very minor discrepancies, like virgin. You see virgin in terms of a young woman of marriageable age, and you also see a strict virgin, somebody that has not had sex at all. These are two separate words in the Hebrew language. So why is there only one word, and they made it clear there's only one word, Ephrati, that refers to an Ephraimite. Ephrathite, the Hebrews would not have had that word. This is why in Morocco, the oldest Jewish settlement in the continent of Africa, the Wifran, called themselves Ephrati. They speak the Hebrew, right? Those Ephrati became the Moors and that kind of thing. A lot of y'all have been asking, how did the Moors become Israelites? Y'all, there's so much history in that, and I've done a lot of lessons on that actually. But basically, Moor does not mean an ethnicity. I need y'all to understand that. Moor just means Negro. I showed y'all Light and Truth. Let me pull it up. If y'all don't have this book, get it off Amazon. Light and Truth, Moor means Negro. Negro is just more Spanish. Moor goes into the African, the Moorish Empire element, right? But understand, these are not two different words. These are not, Moor doesn't mean an ethnicity is what I'm saying. Moor just means black. So who were these people they were calling Moors? Those indigenous Amazighics of Morocco who called themselves Ephrati. They had the Star of David on their flag and everything. They knew that they were Dawoodi, or the family of Dawood, right? And a lot of my Moorish brothers, y'all already know that history. Y'all, and that connects to Amexem, or North America, connects to the plates of Mormon, how America was given to Ephraim. Morocco had rights to America. Morocco was run by Ephraim. Even B'nai Israel did not deny that history. But what he turned it into was a beef between these Moorish Ephraimites and Judah. And in some kind of way, he turned it into some kind of beef when they were one family, led by Joseph. But because a lot of these teachers don't want to acknowledge how Joseph maintained that birthright, a lot of y'all have this affinity with Judah, and you care more about what you think you know than truth. That's just what it comes down to. The Most High doesn't operate like man. What he said in the beginning is what he does in the end. The birthright of Joseph is the equivalent to the birthright given to Jacob versus Esau, the equivalent to what was given to Isaac over Ishmael, the equivalent to the very blessing of Abraham. So when you name the Most High Yah, you call him the God or the power, Allahayim, of Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Yosef, and Ephraim. Now this is the hand of the Most High Yah. That's how powerful that birthright is. So when y'all start thinking that's going away with, what happened was the Most High, to fulfill that promise, tucked the clan of Ephraimites within Judah, which also protected Ephraim from the hijacking of the Edomites that hijacked Judah. A lot of these, even when you look at Josephus, who I quote a lot of y'all have pointed out, JB, Josephus was one of those Edomite Jews. There were so many Europeans that hijacked the tribe of Judah during that time period historically. Josephus, I didn't even bring up, but a lot of y'all were bringing it out that, yeah, Josephus was one of those Edomite Jews. Even though Josephus gives us a lot of history and he talks about how a lot of Edomites infiltrated, he was one of them jokers. That stuff is deep, y'all. Not just him, but Herod was an Edomite. We know a lot of the Pharisees and the Sadducees we learned from Josephus were not Israelites by birth, but they were Edomite converts. This goes into the European converts, the Khazars, a lot of these Edomites. Edom was known for staging a coup to be able to hijack the birthright, but the Most High hid Ephraim, who really had a right to the ting, within Judah. That's the mystery of Joseph being resurrected. I couldn't fathom, y'all. A lot of y'all were saying, JB, the Most High is showing you something that nobody has spoken of in thousands of years. Nobody has brought this history out. And I started thinking about it, and it almost scared me a little bit. I was like, nobody else saw this? And it's kind of scary, y'all, because I'm the kind of person where I don't like to get involved in no controversy or nothing like that. That's not the purpose of Zion Dynasty. I'm just trying to regather the 12 tribes and put my brick in on the work, right? But then I started thinking that nobody saw that the same word that's used for Jeroboam, the Ephraimite, Ephrathite, is the same word of 1 Samuel 17, verse 12. And I give all glory to the Most High Yah, because he is awakening Joseph that was sent to the four corners of the earth. We were in the Americas. We were in Morocco, in West Africa, Nigeria. And he blessed all the nations through this coat of many colors by spreading that birthright throughout all these different nations, y'all. And it's beautiful, right? And I'm going to go back to the book of Ruth real quick. So we see Elimelech, that Ephrathite word is H673, just like Ephraimite, right? And a lot of y'all say, oh, it just means somebody that dwells in Bethlehem. We know that's not the context, because we see in David's lineage in 1 Samuel 17, verse 12, it says, now David, the son of Jesse, the dweller of Bethlehem, Judah, from Bethlehem in Judah. Why did I say it twice? Because if you're saying that word Ephrathite means that, the author was redundant. We know the context is he is signifying his lineage. He was an Ephraimite from Bethlehem within Judah. This goes back to Rachel dying there. This is why Rachel was crying when those Bethlehem babies are under attack by Herod. So y'all, I just wanted to kind of explain it a little bit. Boaz's lineage, I'm going to repeat this again, had nothing to do with the story, the moral of the story. It was about resurrecting that Ephraimite Elimelech's name. So the Most High combined both branches through that kingly line, which is why David was able to be the king over all 12 tribes, Ephraim loved them because they knew this history, and Judah loved them because they loved Boaz, right? So that's the purpose of this, to reunite the 12 tribes. And the majority of them fall within that Ephraimite Joseph lineage, right? Now I'm gonna do some videos, like I told y'all, on the seal portion, and I know a lot of y'all might have confusions about the Book of Mormon and why am I using that. I'm going at this as a historian. Y'all know how I get down. I see a text, and if it verifies a historical event, I'm going to search that text out, right? When I started searching about Joseph migrating to the Americas, Morocco having rights to America, a lot of these native tribes that a lot of our, if you ask your grandparents, they say that we're natives, we're Cherokee, Choctaw, that's the major groups you're gonna hear. I was like, where is this coming from? Why are a lot of our ancestors, our grandparents saying about these native tribes? Joseph, the Moroccans did own America. The Moors are saying that they were over here in the Americas. Is there a book that links that history? Boom, and that's where the Book of Mormon comes in. The Book of Mormon gives you the year where that Josephite family through Nephi, through Manasseh specifically, came over and settled the Americas. This set the stage for the Moorish Empire, where the Moors rallied all of their family together. They knew about these Josephites that were over here. They knew they had Moorish brothers in the Americas, as well as in Africa, Lower Saudi Arabia, those ancient black dwellers, those Afro people that were there. Let me clarify, the Afro dwellers over there in Arabia, those Afro Sephardics that were in Spain. So the Moors, through Morocco, united their family together and staged a rebellion against the Christian North, the Edomites, and pushed them out of Spain and ruled the earth and even ruled Europe. This is where you get the Black Scots from, the Black Irish from, the Black Danes, Schwarzenegger, and a lot of these family crests in Europe that go back to Negro, Sephardic Moors. This is where that history comes from. And this is also the last king of Scotland, the last Moorish king of Scotland, where you get into King James himself, right? I know that's a lot of history, y'all. So basically, those Moorish Ephraimites, I'm showing y'all the history of what happened to them. The Book of Mormon shows us they went to the Americas. The Moors also teach that they had their people in the Americas and owned the Americas, or a Mexim. We also know that a lot of them ruled Europe before they were pushed out in various years. They were kicked out of Spain, went into Nigeria, and a lot of them that had wealth went to the Americas. This is Matthias de Sousa. If you Google Matthias de Sousa was the first African American to serve on the legislature of Maryland. Now, on one article I found, it said he was the first African American. On another article I found, they said he was a black Portuguese. Wait a second, what? I also have a grandmother that knows his history all the way down to my 5th great grandfather, a Felson Basil. He was a part of these Melungeon, they call them, families that they called them free people of color, but they identified as black Portuguese. But they also said they were genetically linked to the Cherokee and the Choctaw. This sounds like, watch this, what the camps have been teaching. I was like, there is something to what these camps have been teaching. I'm all about scholarship, y'all. Wherever the data leads, I have to give honor to where honor is due. The bishop and them have been saying, I gotta tell y'all, the blacks, Native Americans, and Latin Americans, where are they getting those 3 different groups from? In Spain, those Sephardic Latin, right? Those Latin Sephardic Moorish Israelites were banished. They went to the Americas. Brazil was that first spot that they settled, those Sephardics. This is where you get those Latin speakers from. These Latin Afro-Brazilians from. This is that history. They also migrated to the North American region. This is where you get the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole Indians that if you ask your grandparents, y'all test me if I'm wrong. I know a lot of y'all heard me mention Dan Calloway and was like, what the? Ask your great grandparents. If you can go back as far as you can, don't go in and tell them about Israel. Just ask them, have y'all heard anything about Native Americans or anything like that? And then you'll be like, wait a second, my grandmother was talking about that. Where are they getting that from? Because on a census, it would just call them all Negroes. Why on the census do white people call them the same thing? Because those Negroes in the Americas are related to those Negro Sephardics in Africa. This is why they rightfully call you African American. That's the wisdom and the cunningness of Esau, because our people were on both continents. You trace that history through those Moors being banished out of Spain, The wealthy ones went to Brazil. A lot of them migrated to North America. This is where you get those native tribes. They're really Moorish they're Moorish tribes, really. A lot of y'all said, well, they're native. They were there before Europeans, is what I'm saying. They were there before Christopher Columbus, or Colomb, which his name is not Christopher Columbus anyway. That's a whole nother thing. So basically, there is truth to our DNA, the Negro DNA, being linked to the native groups, those native Moors, those Latino populations, and those African American Negro Moors in the continent. All of Israel originated out of Africa, and they went through the Northern Kingdom to settle the Americas, right? This is the history of the Moors. Now, the reason I go through this history, family, is it brings unity to the greatest family that has ever lived. A lot of y'all are not about uniting the 12 tribes. You fell in love with Judah, and you're not about uniting all the 12 tribes. You're not about family. You're not about sitting down and having a conversation. You're not about our leaders coming together. That's just what but the most of my family that's on here, I know what y'all heart is. Y'all heart is to see all of Israel come together. And I just have to bring up those few bad apples. And I don't want to discourage y'all that are taking notes, but basically those 12 tribes, we're trying to trace where they went on earth. And this is what unifies all the black power groups. The Khemit community, the Moors, the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam and the Moors shouldn't even be separate, really. But black people have separated. We don't know how to unite. So you got the Khemit community, the Nation of Islam, the Moors, the Hebrew Israelites, and people that just say I'm pro-black, right? The mystery is they all have a piece to the puzzle. Joseph's wife was Egyptian. Our people were known. Even the plates of Mormon were written in Egyptian hieroglyphs. Our people knew that culture to our downfall, because the Most High said, y'all keep putting your trust in Egypt. Northern Kingdom was known for going into Egypt during hardship, right? That's the Khemitic element. The Moorish element is that during that time of all of these Israelites coming together, it was under the Moors and Morocco and the Ephrati, which is the Hebrew Israelite element. And the Nation of Islam is because a lot of these Moors practiced Islam to create this religion, and they even forced all of Israel to accept it. They started killing Negroes, Israelites that would not convert to Islam. That's the history, family. So a lot of the Nigerians, specifically in the north, practice Islam to this day. They were forced to during the time of the Moors. Now the Moors, they were saying, well, we're trying to unite all of us. We don't want to call ourselves what they're calling themselves up there because they took our history. We're gonna make all of Israel. Y'all, we finna be Moors over here in Africa, right? Now that was, you can call it evil, or you can call it what you want to call it, but it does allow us to find out where the Nation of Islam came from. Why do a lot of our people have this affinity for that crescent? It goes back to the time of the Moors. The Moors say that we know we're Israelites. A lot of Moorish teachers will say we know we're Israelites, but we don't want to identify the way they identify. Islam was created for the black man. That's what these Moors believe, right? Now, in actuality, Torah was our heritage, but it was hijacked by Edomites through Judah, through that Judean influence in that Judean-Palestine era, where a lot of these Edomites came in. We know the history about John Hyrcanus, how he converted, watch this, all of the Edomites to Torah. Now, you can say this was a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just giving you the history. It provided a snare for our people, because now Edom had our history, and they performed to us a get out, and they swapped. So those Israelites that knew what was going on said, well, we're going to create a submission to Yah without them. Submission to Allah. Allah Hayim. That's actually Hebrew in origin. When you break down all these religious constructs, you find a family that has been trying to preserve themselves, and in doing that have gone to all these different nations and have blessed the earth like a coat of many colors. So our people said, we don't want to call ourselves Jews no more. We're going to be Islamic, right? So that's the history of Israel serving that wood and stone. They ran from the wood of Christianity, but they ended up being enslaved by a religion that was not the heartbeat of where they came from. This was a reactionary religion, and not really a religion. It was really a sign of submitting to the Most High Yah. That's what Islam was intended to be. A lot of Islam is talking about not eating pork, a lot of Torah elements, but the Most High said, don't change my Torah. A lot of our people did that with noble intentions because they knew that their identity had been hijacked. but then they lost their history, which is why a lot of African Americans think we're just Muslim, and a lot of even the Nation of Islam, our family that are in the Nation of Islam, you might have relatives or friends, they don't know that they're actually Israelites. Now, a lot of the elders know this history, but it's being lost because that crescent and that wooden cross are both hiding the fact that we're Israelites, ancient Israelites, not Jews. We're ancient Israelites. So I know this was a lot, family. I'm just gonna give y'all a brief summary of what we've been talking about. The Levirate custom, it had nothing to do with Boaz's lineage. It was Boaz serving as the kinsman redeemer to raise up his brother Elimelech that was dead, right? That's our first point. We went through how the reason Elimelech was an Ephraimite is because a lot of those Ephraimites clan, they migrated to Bethlehem, and Joshua gave them that territory because their foremother Rachel died there in Genesis 35 verse 19. We see this confirmed in Matthew that when Herod was killing all those man-child babies, Rachel was crying for Bethlehem. Why Rachel? Because her people, her grandchildren, her babies were in that land. This is how Elimelech was a part of that family that migrated to Bethlehem. We see this in the Jerusalem source that I showed y'all on JSTOR, where they think during the Iron Age or so, a lot of these Ephraimites started migrating into Judea. Some people believe even during the fall of the Assyrian, some of those Ephraimites blended in Judah. So this is where Elimelech's family came from, most likely based on the history. That's why he was an Ephraimite in that region. He dies, Boaz raises up this lineage. The reason this is important is because Ephraim has double fruit, and the majority of so-called black people, natives and Latin populations, we are the Israelites the Bible speaks of, the ancient Israelites, most of us belonging to the 10 out of the 12 tribes, which is the northern kingdom of Israel / Ephraim. You see it called Ephraim because Ephraim inherited the birthright that I told y'all. So the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and Ephraim is the official name of the Most High Yah because of that birthright blessing. And that's why through Joseph's Ephraimite David lineage, we see the southern kingdom be blessed, and through Joseph's Ephraimite Yerubah, our King Jeroboam lineage, we see the northern kingdom. Most African Americans, if you do your DNA, you're from northern kingdom. The 5 northern kingdom Igbo are the royal house of the Yoruba, and those native that came from these Yoruba, Sephardic, Moors, Ephraimites that migrated to the Americas, and it was given to Ephraim to be able to keep their custom, keep their culture that they could not keep in their own land. You see this in Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. It's a lot of different literature on those native groups. I told y'all about the Melungeons, a lot of those Goans, Gallimores, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, different people of color were actually Northern Kingdom Ephraimites. So I hope y'all got something from this. I'm gonna be teaching this history. I know it's a lot, y'all. That's why in each lesson I go back and I review this stuff so that you guys can take notes and get this literature. If y'all want me to do a video going through all these books, because I have got a lot of new ones that I want to share with you guys. Jewish folk tales in Morocco goes through when those Ephraimites set up their kingdom in Morocco. It went all the way back during the time of Joseph, y'all. When Joseph was ruling Egypt, that Egyptian Ephraimite family, they founded a kingdom in Morocco, right? And this book goes into it. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that. North African Atlantic Hidden Birthright. This is by Richard Poole, an Israelite brother. He talks about that Ephrathite Ephraimite connection. I'm also going to that on another video. David and Ephraimite by Christian C. Park. He goes into great history on how the Judean scribes have tried to hide this Ephraimite history. It'll change. It's a lot in this, and I hadn't even dealt with everything he's talked about because I don't know if y'all ready for that. And the Rabbi B. Mitchell Blaine, Joseph is Alive, talks about the resurrection of that line. Y'all, what I thought was cool was when you see, I'm gonna use Superman for example. When you see Superman fighting for truth, justice, the American way, all this Esau stuff, he got the red, white, and blue outfit on and all that. But there's a comic book line, I think Doomsday kills Superman and he dies. And when he resurrects, he has the all black suit on. Now they say it's for him to absorb sunlight better. Let me show y'all how Esau gets down. There was a Jewish family in 1938, Jerry Siegel, I believe, that created the comic book character of Superman modeled after the Judean scriptures. I gotta tell y'all now. So when he resurrects, he has all black on. The resurrection of our people, family, is Joseph. That means the physical lineage of Yeshua was Judah, was even those Edomites that fed us and taught us Torah and taught us that they were the people. That's what housed our people. But when we operate as an autonomous free people, it is Joseph being restored. And that's our true lineage. The resurrection of the so-called black, Native American, and East Latin groups is Joseph, is that coat of many colors. And I thought that was interesting, y'all. So I'm gonna go through Michael Blaine. Joseph is alive. He talks about that resurrection of Joseph, the restoration of that Ephraimite lineage through David's lineage, y'all. It's so much history. And I'm also gonna go into the seal portion. I know a lot of y'all may not have even heard of this, but there's a lot of apocrypha, book of Jasher I want to go into about Joseph, about how he cried when his brother sold him into slavery, and he pleaded with his mother Rachel from the grave to help him. I'm gonna go into that apocrypha. A lot of this Ephraimite stuff, if y'all are fascinated about our history, that those 10 tribes, if you fall into any of them 10 tribes, or even Judah, because without that Ephraimite David's lineage, Judah was blessed, and Judah blessed us through that Boaz. So family, it's all about family, y'all. It's all about the 12 tribes coming together, and I'm gonna go through this history with y'all. I hope y'all got something out of it. I know I was looking a little rough. I ain't really do my usual keep my garment on and that kind of thing. I just was so passionate about this word. I've been in here ranting all morning, so I said let me go ahead and get this ready for the family. So I hope y'all got something out of it. I hope y'all were blessed. I love you all with the love of the Messiah. Peace, love, blessings, and Israelite power to the 12 tribes scattered to the 4 corners of the earth, and all my Ephraimite Moors out there. I love you all from the depths of my heart's cry. Y'all be blessed. Shalom. All praises.